Today we are reviewing the Royal Canin Glycobalance dog food. It is very likely that if you have been prescribed or recommended this food, your dog is diabetic, and sadly diabetic dogs do not last very long, sometimes because people fail to understand the condition. So in this video we are going to both review the condition, some top tips for your dog so they can be with you for as long as possible, and then we are going to review this food. Now, Royal Canin, on the back of the packet, they say something really important. They say that ongoing elevation of blood glucose, of sugar levels, can cause many health issues in dogs, and that is very true. Then they say that eating a meal results in a rise of blood glucose levels. The goal to maintain the levels within a safe range throughout the day. This means that anytime your dog eats, a spike in blood glucose is going to occur. They then say that it's formulated with a reduced level of starch. These are carbohydrates, and carbohydrates are then going to be converted into sugar, into glucose. 49% less than size health and nutrition medium adult, and a high level of protein. So high levels of protein is always good in a dog's food, and a reduced level of starch is always good in a dog's food. Now, pancreatitis or diabetes is a very serious issue. Now, diabetes is a disorder of metabolism, the way the body uses digested food for growth and energy. Most of food dogs eat is broken into glucose, into sugar, the form of sugar in the blood. Glucose is the main source of fuel for the body. In dogs can actually make their own blood sugar, their own energy, by just eating protein and fat in a process called gluconeogenesis. So they do not need any dietary carbohydrates whatsoever, and they can just do this with protein and fat. Now, diabetes occurs when glucose or sugar builds up in the blood due to the pancreas not producing enough insulin or not using it correctly to regulate sugar levels, resulting in low energy levels. Insulin is a hormone that the body needs to absorb glucose. After food that our dogs eat is digested, glucose passes down into the bloodstream. For glucose to get into cells to produce energy, insulin needs to be present. The pancreas is supposed to automatically produce the right amount of insulin to move glucose from blood into the cells. And so in dogs with diabetes, the pancreas either produces little insulin or no insulin whatsoever to be able to cope with the amount of carbohydrates, with the rush of blood sugar to bring down sugar levels. Glucose here builds up in the blood, and the body naturally tries to get rid of the excess glucose from the body by filtering the blood. Excess glucose, excess sugar, then overflows into urine and passes out of the body. So if your dog is urinating very frequently, that is one key indication that your dog might be diabetic. But it's not only diabetic dogs that need a good diet. Also, pre-diabetic dogs need a very good diet, and you need to keep an eye on them. And dogs with pancreatitis will also need something very specific in terms of their diet. Now that we have addressed the condition and we know a little bit more about it, we need to review the ingredients of the food, because it is absolutely imperative that you read all the ingredients for your dog if they have diabetes or any other health issue. And as we have just discussed, if your dog doesn't need any dietary carbohydrates whatsoever, because they can make their own energy from protein and fat, any carbohydrates, any highly refined carbohydrates you put in your dog is going to be detrimental to their health. Let me give you a few examples. If we give our dogs rice, wheat, barley, corn, those are very, very high glycemic carbohydrates. They are going to spike insulin levels, and your diabetic dog is going to have a very, very hard time bringing those blood sugar levels back down to normal. They are going to have unusual spikes, and what we want is a stable blood glucose level. Now, to the ingredients, the first one is chicken byproduct meal. Not chicken, not fresh chicken, but chicken byproduct meal. And this again is not very, very good in terms of the quality of the protein. We then get into barley. Barley is a high glycemic carbohydrate. It spikes insulin levels, is highly refined, and it's not the right ingredient to be put in a diabetic dog's food, in my opinion. We then get into corn gluten meal. Again, corn gluten is not the right carbohydrate for your dog. Corn is again highly refined, spikes insulin levels, and it's not going to be very, very good. We then get powdered cellulose, which is dietary fiber for your dog. We get wheat gluten. Again, wheat gluten is inflammatory, is highly refined, it spikes insulin levels. And if you have a dog with diabetes, you don't want to be eating wheat gluten. Remember that if you were having a diabetes yourself, you wouldn't be eating highly refined carbohydrates to moderate and to manage your diabetes. You wouldn't be eating a lot of wheat or pasta, for example, or white bread, because that would spike your insulin levels, and that would be again very, very hard for your body to be able to regulate your blood glucose. And the same applies to your dog. Also, your dog is more a meat eater than anything else. Look at their canines. So giving your dog any rice, any wheat, any corn gluten, any wheat gluten isn't the best for your dog. We get plain beet pulp, which is a form of sugar. Sugar is not very good for your dog. Tapioca is a starch, is a high glycemic carbohydrate, yet another high glycemic carbohydrate. And then chicken fat, natural flavors, we do not know where the flavors are coming from. Is it chicken flavor? Is it beef flavor? Is it venison flavor? Is it sea bass flavor? We do not know, because they do not specify. Natural flavor is pretty vague whenever it comes to a dog's food. So all in all, we get crude protein 35%, crude fat 10%, which is moderate fat, fiber 10%, moisture 10%, and starch 25%, and sugars almost 6%. So between starches, carbohydrates, and sugar, we get 30% of the bag. Now, let me give you a bit of an example. If you were going to eat 30% of your diet, of your overall diet, if you were diabetic, in terms of fast food, high glycemic carbohydrates, wheat gluten, pasta, hamburgers, anything highly refined, anything highly palatable, that would not be the best for your diet as a diabetic. And in my opinion, this wouldn't be the right diet for your dog if your dog has diabetes. Why? Well, we have barley, we have corn gluten meal, we have wheat gluten, we have tapioca, and then we have natural flavors which aren't very specific. So whenever we talk about diabetic dogs and diabetes, we need to address the ingredients that we give our dogs, and we want that blood glucose level to be as level as possible. We do not want any highly refined carbohydrates, because those carbohydrates are going to be attempted to get converted into glucose, into sugar, for your body to be able to use it, for your dog's body to be able to use it. And because your pancreas isn't using insulin efficiently, they are really going to struggle, and that's going to spike insulin levels and is not the best for your diabetic dog, in my opinion. Now, we have put a very useful guide for your diabetic dog, and this focuses on what we believe is the right diet for your diabetic dog. A diet that won't spike insulin levels, and a diet that will not contain any highly refined carbohydrates. It will not contain any highly refined corn gluten meal. We will not talk about wheat gluten or plain beet pulp or tapioca or anything that is going to be, in our opinion, detrimental to your dog's condition. It's going to be things that are very good for your dog. So I'm going to leave the guide down below in the description and you can take a look at it. And I believe that those guidelines are a lot better than the Royal Canin Glycobalance. Now from now on, I always want you to read everything you give your dog, and we want to avoid anything highly refined. So no cereals, no wheat, no barley, no corn, no meat and animal derivatives, nothing vague. We want traceability, and we want a high protein, moderate fat, and little to no carbohydrates. Any carbohydrates you provide your dog with need to be slow release of energy in the low glycemic scale. Things like sweet potato, things like oats, for example, but obviously we will need to look at the whole diet in order for us to assess the right amount of carbohydrates, of slow energy release and carbohydrates, and that's probably going to be the best bang for your buck. If you check fruits or vegetables, for example, those have a much lower glycemic index and slow release of energy. If you eat pasta, or you go to McDonald's, for example, you are going to feel full very quickly, and then you're going to be hungry again shortly after. But if you eat porridge, for example, or fruits or vegetables, you're going to keep fuller for longer. And that is the right way to think about diabetic dogs and your diabetic dog. So let me know what you think. I hope that helps. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.